Welcome back, Yogi Clan, to Yogi Cycle Service. I am joined here today again with Chuck, and we are here to talk about air filters. We're going to be talking trash about some air filters, so this should be a fun little video. I thank you for jumping in and watching this. I hope to answer, or hope he can answer, because it's going to be a lot of him doing the talking, because he's the expert in this field. I am merely a young little Padawan. So, thank you for joining us today. Stay tuned while we get this discussion going. All right, welcome back again to Yogi Cycle Service. Thank you for joining us. What are we talking about today, Chuck?
We're going to talk about air filters. There's basically three different, very popular kinds. There's some others, but we don't use them in automotive. So we're going to talk about the three popular ones. And they would be paper, which is a wood pulp base, kind of like a paper towel or construction paper that you can breathe through. The K&N one, which is a oiled gauze filter, and a foam filter.
Okay, what are like, so you have paper, the gauze, and the foam. Would you typically use those? Like, what applications would they go for?
Well, we'll start with the foam. Real popular in dirt bikes because you put a little bit of oil on it. They hold a lot of dirt. They're easy to wash because you're in the dirt, in the mud. You get home, you wash it out, you clean it out, it's reusable. They do a great job on those little motors.
I would think John Deere yard tractor, I believe, has one of those foam filters in it.
Yeah,
That's another good example. I guess they're really good when you put the oil on them and collecting dust.
If you want to know if you got an oil leak, ride down the dirt road. Wherever that dust is sticking, that's where your oil leak is.
Okay. All right. So the foam ones?
The foam ones, now, they have a couple drawbacks. They don't flow as good as some of the others. They get full of dirt easy, but we're talking little air filters, little motors. They do make them for like the V-Rod and the other bikes, but they're not that common. I think the most popular company is Uni.
Okay.
The two big drawbacks is they fill up with dirt quick, and if you have a carburetor and it backfires because it is oil foam, they can catch on fire.
That wouldn't be good.
Right. Now, as they get full of mud in the dirt, you can actually start sucking the foam out of the filter, so they can come apart in that manner. And they do have a shelf life because it is foam and it'll dry rot.
And degrade over time.
Right.
That makes sense. Okay. All right.
So that's kind of the fat and skinny of the foam. Then, we'll go to the K&N type, the oil type. Popular in probably more forms of racing than any other filter. One of the reasons is you ever take a gauze pad and breathe through it, it's real easy.
Yeah, right.
So they flow a lot of air. The oil, again, you put oil on it, it attracts the dirt, and they're cleanable. So again, reusable. They're more expensive than the foam ones. K&N, I think, has a 1,000,000-mile, 10-year warranty or guarantee on it that'll last 10 years if properly maintained. But you pay for it.
Right.
Just old hot rod 13 or 14-inch air filter, 3-inch tall. You could get one from Fram for like $6 at Wally World. A K&N one's like 70.
Now, K&N, that's what I see typically on like a stage 1 on a Harley, something
Right.
along that lines, used by like the Arlen Nest stage 1.
Right.
Screaming Eagle, is a Screaming Eagle a K&N filter?
I don't want to overstep. I think at one point they were. Now they're using something different, but I'm not sure. But yes, it's a high flow. Right, it's a high flow air filter.
Now, how do you said you oil them? So you oil them, that way it's catching the dirt, catching any kind of debris before it goes into your engine. How do you clean it? When 20,000 miles comes, how do you clean one of those filters?
Hot soapy water.
Hot soapy water, that's it.
Hot soapy water, yep. It's cotton gauze. It's like cleaning blue jeans. Hot soapy water.
You don't scrub it with anything, like a toothbrush or something like that?
No, because you don't want to rip the gauze.
Okay.
You actually want to wash it from the inside out and push the dirt back out opposite the way it was coming in. So, in your sink, hot soapy water, clean it out. Some people will say use ATF. I'm kind of against ATF, especially if you have an old, a non-V-Rod motor with it on the side of your bike, because that air filter's sitting on the side and that oil starts dripping out. The ATF oil starts dripping out. Now it's inside your air filter housing. It's on your bike. It looks like you have an oil leak. So, and they could drip for weeks. The spray is made to be washed out and it's designed for that. It's a little bit more expensive than ATF. I think it's a little bit more effective. Back in the racing days when I built dirt track motors, you get 7 or 8 K&N filters and have them all with transmission fluid in them hanging on the wall of the trailer. Mm-hmm. So every time you did some heat laps and it'd start getting dirt in it, you're just putting another one on. So, that was the simplicity of that, but you're not going to keep doing that on your bike.
Now, what is it, K&N spray that you use?
Yeah.
And where can you get that?
Believe it or not, AutoZone and Advance carries it. O'Reilly's.
It's a pretty common auto parts stores.
And I'm sure you could get it on eBay or Amazon if you're looking for a deal and you don't mind waiting a day or two.
Right. Okay. So does that cover then the K&N style filter?
Yeah, and then you have this stock paper filter. They're either made of wood pulp or like the AMSOIL one you put in the V-Rod. It's made of a synthetic high flow fiber. And that will get us into the high flow conversation about filters. But the big thing about filters is you want to make sure that you maintenance them and whatever one you use, that they're installed correctly. If you have a K&N, they got rubber seals on them. Some people put a little bit of grease around it where it butts up against, anything to keep, that extra dirt out. But I did mention high flow.
Right. So that said, I know on my Fat Boy, it has, I believe it's the Arlen Ness with the K&N filter on it. On my Ultra Classic, it is still the stock filter that's on there and the stock paper filter. And I have about 50,000 miles on there. I just changed it probably about 3,000 or 4,000 miles ago. It was $20. $25. And I was like, should I put the stage 1 on the bike at this time? Because now you're talking like $150. Because I was looking at that yesterday. I was thinking, tax return time's coming. Should I put a stage 1 on this? But I was thinking, with the stage 1, not only am I going to have to do that, but because I don't have my stock exhaust on anymore, now I'm probably going to need to get some kind of fuel additive box to put on there.
Right, a tuner or something.
Power commander.
Or a flash or
Vance and Hines or something.
Right, so
I'm thinking,
you start.
Air filter kit, $150, some way to flash or retune the ECM. There's another $300. This is quickly turning into a $500 project versus, maybe I just go out and put another $20 filter on it. So that may be a little bit down the road, maybe tax return time next year. But with that, let's talk about that because I have the 103-inch engine on there. How much difference really is a high flow air filter going to do for that bike?
All right. There's actually a formula to figure out how big your air filter should be for your motorcycle or any engine. Being it comes from the hot rod days, it's in cubic inches. If you were going to convert your metric measurements, liters, it's 60.5 cubic inches per liter. We're just going to go with metric. The V-Rod's 1130 cc's, it comes out to 69 cubic inches. So what you do is you take your engine size in cubic inches, you multiply it by your maximum RPM, you divide by 20,500.
Which is?
It comes out to 22.
What's 20,500? What is that?
That is the number. It's the number that the engineers came up with to use. That's the best.
I wasn't asking you for you to do the math. Okay. I was just trying to figure out. But where did that come from?
But anyway, on the V-Rod, it's 69 cubic inches. It's got a 9,000 RPM max RPM, and you divide by the 25,500, and it comes out to like 24.2. Is the reference number for the filter. Some websites say you use your maximum horsepower RPM. On the V-Rod, it's 8,200. So that comes out to like 22 and change on the filter size. The filter that you put in the V-Rod, believe it or not, is 108 on that reference scale.
Oh wow! So it'll cover you
for
it's quite a while.
Yeah, it's way overkill. So when you start talking about a high flow air filter, do you really need to spend all that extra money on a high flow air filter, or is the factory one capable? Obviously on the V-Rod, it's almost 5 times as big as it needs to be.
Right.
Just as a reference, that air filter on the V-Rod comes out to be almost the exact same size that you would have on, let's say, a 1967 427 Corvette with a 6,500 RPM red line.
Oh, wow.
So that's a big block air filter on the V-Rod. That's why it's so fast. Shh.
Okay.
So the Corvette comes out to, the Corvette engine comes out to like 109, and this is 108. So you're
Okay.
right there. Now these numbers are for clean air filters, and the number is easy enough to figure out. It's just the surface area of the filter. That's what they're looking for.
Okay.
So if you take, the V-Rod one is rectangular, so if you take all 4 sides times the height, it gives you the reference number.
Okay. How much of an impact on not just a V-Rod, but like an ultra classic as a touring bike, going from a paper to a high flow?
Well, I don't.
Any idea? The reason why I ask this, you see so many forums out there going, "Oh, I can tell by the seat of the pants how much faster this bike is." I put it on the Fat Boy and I couldn't tell. I'm like,
And you're
okay.
you're probably right. At one point, air filter, there is some information out there about how much air a filter, specific air filters will move under a certain amount of predetermined airflow. So if with no filter directed in, maybe it's going to move 100 cubic feet a minute. And you put an air filter on there and it drops down to 98. And you put a real restrictive one on there and it drops down to 90. But again, I only need 22 on mine. So, how much restriction or opening up does it do?
So if you only need 22, you having something on there that's maybe a 50 or a 90 or 110, it really makes no difference because you can only get so much air into that engine at once anyways, right?
Right. So the air filter, now I'm talking just the filtering material, the element. I'm not talking the air filter housing or induction system or any of that. That will be more of a horsepower increase. So just for numbers, if you had a 120-inch, Evo or twin cam that was making power with a newer intake, an updated high performance intake, and you were to take out the high flow filter and put in a paper type filter, there might be some horsepower difference. Is it seat of the pants? It might be for somebody who's real sensitive, but probably not for the average because you're only looking at the peak, like way, that hard acceleration from the light. You might notice, but cruising, probably not.
So putting a stage 1 on my Ultra is not going to let me do drag races compared to what I'm doing right now. It's
Right.
Be fairly, and I thought I've seen spots saying, "Oh yeah, this added 15 more horsepower." I'm wondering if that's more the tuner, the combination of a aftermarket exhaust, the air filter, and the tuner, not just the air filter.
Well, I think that some of these numbers kind of gotten drugged from hot rod to other aspects to motorcycles. A car, like we said, the Corvette, if you had a small little restrictive air filter on there because you wanted to show off all your chrome, and then you put a proper sized air filter on it, I'm sure you're going to see a 15 horsepower increase. But just to take the one element out and put another element in, I don't think you're going to see that increase, anywhere near that. Again, using the air filter housing and the tubes and all that as an induction system, that's the horsepower. The filter isn't your horsepower increase.
Right. So if I were to put a new cam in there, then it would probably be advisable to put a higher flow air filter on there, would it not?
It doesn't hurt.
Right.
It doesn't hurt. Now, is there a difference if you were to dyno test it with the stock type air filter and then dyno test it with the high flow air filter and everything was tuned to the upteenth, you might see some horsepower difference. But if you were to take your stock induction system off and put a aftermarket, bigger, better breathing induction system on, that's where your horsepower would come from. So
Okay.
it's the air filter is just part of the equation. It's not the equation.
Right. Okay. How about things like hyperchargers? I know we didn't discuss before this video about hyperchargers, but let's talk about hyperchargers. What did they do? They look cool.
They look cool. They got the little flaps in them. They sit on the side of the motor, so when the flaps open up, it forces air into it. Except if you ever look at a hypercharger cover, there's a big slit in the back to let excess air through. So it's not forcing air into the motor. It's directing it towards the air filter, getting air in there. But again, you're talking, bits and pieces. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the S&S teardrop air filter. If you're not, Google anything from the 90s. It's got one on it. Teardrop and a Thunderheader on an Evo was the hot ticket. If you look at that system, the air comes from behind it, comes in, and there's a spike in the middle of that teardrop cover. That's where it's got that little dimple. It's got a spike that goes down in there, and the whole premise was to get the air to come in, go through the air filter, and straighten out to go into the carburetor for more velocity. The air filter job in there is two. First, it's getting out dirt. Second, it's trying to straighten the air out, so you're not getting these vibrations as it's trying to get the air in. I don't want to get into how the carburetor works, but
Right.
the air that goes through there, straight and smooth, will atomize better, so you get more power. So it's part of a system, and that's what I'm saying.
Okay. Awesome.
Back to that S&S carburetor.
Yep.
The S&S air filter that comes in your Super G or Super E has a number of 47.
Okay.
My shovel head, which is 88 inches, needs around 20. So I'm not even half. And that's shifting it at 5,800 RPM. If you go to a big 124, like a Jim's or an S&S 124 motor, I've read different, and some say 5,800, 6,200. Anyway, either way, it's only like 32. So that S&S air filter is big enough for a big 124 that's making, power. Because believe it or not, the horsepower doesn't dictate the size of the air filter, it's engine RPM.
Okay.
And here's a quick one. I'm pretty sure most people heard of a Hayabusa.
Yep.
They're 1,300 cc's.
Yep.
Anyway, that number comes out to 36. At 11,000 RPM on that Hayabusa, the number's 36. So an S&S air filter is big enough for a Hayabusa.
Wow.
And those are 180, 200 horsepower motors.
So I guess really for me personally to decide whether I'm going to do the stage one or when I'm going to do the stage one, I just really kind of need to sit down and do the math and figure out where my stock paper filter fits into the whole picture, and whether or not I want to commit those funds at this time to putting on a stage one on the Ultra.
But now a stage one there's a horsepower advantage, but there's also a drivability advantage. It does help some of that. It cleans the bike up, I guess the best to say it. I'm making this up, if you were to look at the horsepower chart raw, it might be bouncy like this, and you put the stage one in and it's just a little wavy, so the bike feels smoother.
Okay.
So, I think a stage one is a good investment and start, especially if you use the bike a lot. If you're just looking for brag numbers, just make something up. Nobody knows.
Awesome. Well, that's good info. Anything else before we wrap up?
Yeah, cheap air filters.
Yes.
Cheap air filters. I don't know what's actually out there available on eBay or Amazon, but I will say that there's two things. One is, I know from the automotive world, some of the cheap filters, when they get wet, humidity, rain, they'll actually clog up, the moisture swells that wood pulp up, and it'll start pulling chunks out. Now you got big holes in your air filter. The other thing, if you look at some air filters, you'll see that they have the pleats, the folds in them. You'll see that they're real small and tight, and they have a lot. and then you look at a less expensive one and they're really spread out. Well, that's your surface area of the dirt. So when you spend $5 on an air filter versus $10 on an air filter and realize you have only half the filter material, that's kind of the difference. So at some level you're getting what you're paying for, and then again you can overpay. I put a AMSOIL filter in mine mainly because I found it on eBay for so cheap. The Harley wants $65 for an air filter for the V-Rod. I got that one for 40.
Wow.
Simple math.
And it's a good quality filter.
It's a good quality. It's a 4-year filter. It can be vacuumed out or blown out. They say it'll last 4 years. So, and mileage don't matter, they say. Just keep up on it.
One other point about cleaning, is it okay to take an air compressor and from the inside blow it out before you clean it with soapy water?
If you do, it should be very restricted air.
Low pressure.
Don't use
not 120 psi.
Yeah, don't use 120 psi. If you have one of those reducers, so it's just blowing out, and you don't want to blow directly into it. You want to blow it across, and that'll help from punching holes through the material.
Okay, awesome.
So, other than the dirty job an air filter has to do,
yeah, really,
I think we kind of covered most of the bases on it. Again, we're just talking the air filter and the different kinds and what they can flow. Again, the V-Rod can flow enough for a big block Chevy, so I don't, putting a higher flow air filter on it doesn't make sense.
That's great. Good information.
All right.
Thank you for joining us here at Yogi Cycle Service. I hope you guys pick up some tips out of this discussion about air filters, whether they're foam filters, can-end filters, or high flow filters. Thank you for joining us today. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, and come back and join us for the next video. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.
And ask Yogi for ideas. He will do them.
Yes. Give me feedback. Give me ideas. Anything that comes to mind, any questions you may have, any wrenching videos you want to see, product reviews you want to see, let us know. We'll get them filmed for you. Take care. Have a great week.